You are listening to The Ben Keats Show, where every day the objective is simple. Ben will never stop fighting the fight and lighting the light on topics that affect you every day.
Welcome, everybody, to The Ben Keats Show. We are back with Linda Hills for another round of her story through some of the darkest parts of her life, but then also today, really, how did she and how can you pull out of these places that we never want to find ourselves in, but sometimes it's just simply a reality. So, Linda, welcome back to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Sorry we had to make everybody wait a week for this, but it'll all be good. Let's we covered so much, so some of the audience may know, or maybe you're just simply tuning into the first one. Let's actually start with this. So you had mentioned at the end of episode 50 about domestic abuse charges that were against you. Just, it's kind of like hope dashed, and just this realization of where you were and maybe where you didn't want to be. How do you, and it's a little unusual, how do you as a female and having this kind of action against you, how does that define you or not define you? How do you make sense of just this place that you were in that moment in that time? What are you thinking? How did that work for you?
Well, what I know today is I understand more about codependence and addiction today than I did even back then. And I know that there was an addiction to him. And I know that again, going back to self-worth and self-esteem, like my performance, what I did, that behavior doesn't define who I am.
Right.
That is just something that I did. It's a behavior. And what I know, like I'm an internal family systems therapist. So I know that like that was a part of me. That was like a firefighter part of me, is what we call it in the IFS world, that, went to violence because I didn't know how to feel my pain back then. I didn't know how to feel that shame back then. I mean, I was feeling it, I was in it, but I didn't understand my feelings and emotions back then. And I didn't, I just didn't understand what I do today.
When you said that you were addicted to him, can you describe the ties that kept you in that place, and how do you see a different way? How do you find a way out of that addiction from him, literally?
Yeah. So after I had those domestic violence charges pressed against me, I ended up, going and having an assessment done, because that's the process, right? So in that assessment, they actually deemed me the victim of domestic violence.
Interesting.
Right. And so they sent me to the YWCA for treatment.
Okay.
The YWCA offered a class. It was a 16-week class. And I took that class 3 times.
Wow.
Because it was so fulfilling. It was so interesting. Like I started learning things that I didn't even learn in college.
Wow.
Here I was a master's level therapist. I mean, at that time, I didn't have my license at that time. But I didn't understand even what I was helping other people with at that time.
That's fascinating. And so what were some of those takeaways? What these missing links? What was that?
Well, and I want to go back to the question you asked me about the addiction. Like what I know now about addiction is like the reason that a person uses substances or uses people is because you feel a certain way. You're getting a dopamine hit, right? So like I said earlier, there's a both and. Like he made me feel bad about myself, and he gave me a sense of belonging or strength as well.
Mm,
So it was just the push and the pull. It's just like the person that continues to drink or use drugs, they're getting a need met. That's why they're using it. He was meeting certain needs, and what I know now, it was love addiction and sex addiction.
right.
You know, it was, I had my own love addiction and sex addiction, and he probably did too. I can't talk for him, but I
Right.
know today. And that's that part of that codependence.
Right.
You know, I mean, because we've kind of learned that codependence is the kind of the foundation of our addictions. And we have codependence issues because we have unresolved trauma from our past. And so as I started working on my recovery and, you know, going to the YWCA and then eventually doing other things to pull me out of that trauma and codependence.
So when you were saying that, I was thinking of this is kind of a random thought for you. I was thinking of like a sentence, like what do they call it in English class, like a compound sentence, where there's two clauses within a sentence, and one of the sentences is true, and one of the parts of the sentences is false. And so it kind of appeared like in your life, in your experience, there was these things that were true, or maybe even good, or maybe like at least can keep us going, while then on the other side there's these things that are bad or not good, and stuff that we have to deal with, and it seems like there's a constant war between the two. How do you compartmentalize the good and the bad, and then start making, like, saying this bad has to change, or I don't, like, how do you, that's just the way my brain processed. I don't know what you think, but how do you do that, like, understand that?
I think the one of the most important pieces was that I started being around other people that were sharing their darkness. They were sharing the truth about the pain. And so when you get into a group and you realize you're not the only one that has these issues or that this is happening to,
Right.
it gives you like a different frame of reference.
I see.
I hope that answered your
No,
question.
it did. And it leads me to think about this. So let's take you and I out of the equation for a second, and let's just um take an average married couple. Okay, just an average couple. And because I think the principle could be like that we can relate to, where we have this element going on in our lives, in our relationship or our marriage, whatever that is, but then there's these other things that are good. What kind of advice would you give somebody that's listening that is, man, I love him, but there's this, and I don't know how to, I don't know how to get him or her to understand this part of it. Like, I want to keep things going. I want this relationship to work, but I don't know how to deal with this part of our relationship that just seems like it could end up pushing us to break up or divorce at some point. What would you say to a male or female, just anybody going through that right now?
Yeah, I would say really slow down and get curious and get clarity.
Hmm.
Because, you know, like I mentioned earlier, I'm an internal family systems therapist now. I've been trained, I'm not certified in IFS, but I'm trained in it and I understand the parts of us better. And we, as individuals, are our main caregiver. Like we are to be the one that takes care of ourselves. We are a primary caretaker. In relationship, our partner is supposed to be our secondary caretaker.
Right.
Okay. And so when we start to understand that there are different parts of us as individuals, so there's a part of me that lashed out and ended up hitting someone, right? That's a
Right.
part of me. That's not my true self.
Right.
My true self is like calm and compassionate and curious and creative and clear and connected and confident. And not just do I have that true self, you have that true self. And so do the individuals in relationship that we're talking about, right? And so really looking at the partner that you have right now, can you see their true self? Or are they living out of their parts? And remembering that we have those firefighter parts, we have manager parts, and we have exiled parts. And the exiled parts are the part of us that have been wounded. And when we can see the beauty in all of the person that we're with and not just their darkness or their behaviors,
Right.
right? When we can see that true self, are they doing the best that they can? Are we doing the best that we can to take care of ourselves and meet our needs? And then asking for help when we need help getting those needs met and being there in a reciprocal relationship.
Right. That can be so tough to do. That can be or maybe sometimes it's like that one person within a relationship feels inclined, but then, really getting both people on board. And I don't know, like I always think of love and what is it and what is it not. And I sometimes wonder if two people got back to the core of, okay, like we're on this path and this path doesn't look good and we're ending up here, and just having a conversation again, what is love? What is love supposed to look like with us? We say we love each other, we're in this, but a lot of times it doesn't feel like, I don't know if love should feel like this. And I know love's an action, okay? And so, and just having a conversation like, what should this look like 6 months from now, or what do we need to do to get to where we're loving without where we can put our need, like put the other person first. I think like we can love in that way with actions, but I don't feel love from you when you're doing this, or this doesn't measure up or seem right. I don't know. It's just me kind of freelancing right now as I'm thinking about that, but that it just seems like in conversations I've had with folks, it I don't know if love's actually even going on, or if the way you're expressing it. I don't know. I just What do you think about that? How would
Yeah,
that
I think
yeah.
really sitting down and getting curious about like what your needs are, what your values are, what's really important to you as an individual, and then together as a relationship.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. When I think about, it's difficult for a person to advocate for themselves, for their wants, for their needs in life. I always go back in my mind to, say, a high school kid, and a high school kid works at a job, and that kid, she wants to be able to go to a dance on Saturday, but she was scheduled to work, and she didn't end up just calling in sick and avoid the situation, because it's difficult for a 17-year-old to talk to the 40-year-old boss at work and to advocate for themselves. Look, like I need this. This is where I'm at right now, and they feel pressure to do what they're supposed to do. I was scheduled to work, or I'm just going to run from the problem. I'm just going to call in and just no call, no show. And so that scenario for some reason plays out in my mind. And I feel like what would you say if you had, it could be a 17-year-old, 27-year-old, or 67-year-old who just simply can't advocate for themselves? They're always putting other people ahead of themselves. How do you teach someone how to actually do that? Because I don't know if it comes natural for most of us. I mean, we can be intimidated by that higher power, whatever that is. So
absolutely.
how do you
Yeah.
help someone with that?
Yeah. So one of the things I say is there's a difference between being kind and being nice.
Hmm. Yeah.
Nice is often people pleasing, kind is boundary.
Okay.
And then when I talk about codependence, right? And that unresolved trauma. So there's 5 core issues of codependence. Okay. The first core issue is our self-esteem. We can get into a place that we're better than or less than, and we can vacillate. So in one relationship, we may feel better than, another we may feel less than, or
Okay.
at work, we feel better than or less than. But the truth is that we're all perfectly imperfect human beings. We're just doing the best we can, growing in wisdom and love.
Right.
And then that second core issue is our boundaries, where we can learn how to protect and contain ourselves with internal and external boundaries. And then the third core issue is our reality, really knowing the reality of our past and the reality of today, and being able to share that reality diplomatically. Our thoughts and feelings are our reality, and everybody's reality is different. And then that fourth core issue of codependence, that's where those needs and wants come in. And that's where interdependence comes in. But a lot of us are anti-dependent. And so it's like, I don't want anyone to know I have issues. I don't need
Right.
any help. I'm not going to receive help, even if you're asking if you can help me. I don't know how to let people help me. Or there's that over dependence on people, places, or things. And then
Yep.
there's some people that don't even know what their needs and wants are. So how do you get your needs and wants met if you don't know what they are?
Right.
And then the fifth core issue is that codependence is that spontaneity and balance. So when you're asking about that 17-year-old, that 27-year-old, that 57-year-old, if they don't know how to share their reality and say, hey, these are my needs and wants, and this is my boundary, I can't come to work today because there's something else I've got to take care of. Right?
Right.
I need
Right.
to go to the doctor. I need time off to have a surgery. But if you feel like you're less than and everybody else is better than, you being there is more important to take care of their needs instead of you being able to take care of yours.
So then, okay, so let's go back to the 17-year-old. So the 17-year-old, let's just say in this hypothetical story, she dropped the ball because she didn't prepare and ask off for the day for this dance. She technically messed up in a sense
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what her work. Okay. So then what we do sometimes I feel like is we live within our mess up and say, well, then I have to take the brunt of whatever this is. And I may just escape it or not even deal with it, or I may lie or I may do something else. But um, because in relationships sometimes in advocating, like we see that we do have some fault in this or we do have some culpability. Um, how do you how would you help someone admit and get that, but then still like, but this is still where I need to be? How do you because our own mistakes can sometimes sabotage us times 10 because we just don't so how would you help somebody, just with that in that place maybe?
Well, I think one thing is that a lot of times we have way too much on our plate. So
Right.
life is like unmanageable,
For sure.
right?
Guilty. Yeah.
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 So really being able to like start looking at your schedule and like things that don't bring you joy, take them off your plate so you have more time and energy to make sure that what you need to be doing, you have time to be doing.
Right.
So, and it's not easy to be accountable, right? Or to
Right.
live with our consequences.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, that's because maybe she should miss, maybe in my made up story she should miss the dance because she whatever. That um I think that I have slowly learned but tried to learn, and I think that I would want to help younger people or anybody is just is sometimes when we're at fault, like just lead with that. Like, I should have done this. I
Yeah,
know I dropped the ball here. And you almost come to it with an approach of hopefully they give some grace and some understanding. And
yeah,
because they see your vulnerability, they see like that, like, yeah, no, I did. And just
yeah,
completely, be in that place. That's a powerful place that, I think good-hearted people would hopefully
yeah,
receive, because it doesn't happen all the time.
yeah. Like, I mean, again, going back to that, like we're perfectly imperfect. We're human beings. We're gonna make mistakes,
Right.
you know. And when you're able to say, "Hey, I made a mistake and I overbooked myself," or "Hey, I forgot about this dance that I have
Yeah.
going on, and it's very important to me to go. What can I do? What can I do to make an amends for the fact that I've messed up?
Right.
Can you give me the grace and let me go? Or do I need to work and live with the consequences of not managing my schedule right?"
I completely agree. I sometimes think that, I don't know if this is true or not, but I just sometimes think that the ability to own certain things in a humble and honest way might actually come from a confident person, so sometimes we think of somebody who is in a bad mental place, and they're just, they think, what's the word you use, like when you think less of yourself, when you've described it in a couple different ways, but that when you're in that place, is it even, someone that says they're sorry all the time? I'm not talking about that necessarily, but it's hard. I just wonder sometimes if it's hard to be like that vulnerable and that straightforward when you think lousy of yourself, when your self-esteem is hit, because you might think that if your self-esteem is low, you can be this groveling apologetic person all the time. I don't know, I'm just kind of, again, just kind of thinking out loud with that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what I heard you say, or what I make up about that, is like a person they're in deep shame if they
Yeah.
don't know their worth, because the opposite of self-worth is shame.
Mm, you're right. Right. Yes. And so then if you're in that place of shame, it's hard to maybe even have that conversation with the boss. It's
Mhm.
it's easier to run. And so then the snowball effect happens in your life in a simple example like this, but then when things really matter in relationships, the pattern's established. Um, you had said something else. I think it was your third point um in your 5 steps, I think, with codependency, about your
Yeah, the
knowing your,
five core issues.
thank you. Yeah. um
Mhm.
about reality and knowing your reality. And my question for you is, I've observed that some people may know their reality, but they don't, they they're either stating it wrong, or they're not, like, they know their experiences, but how do you, have you ever, spoken with people who they know their past, or they know whatever, but what they're extracting from that, and how they're processing moving away from that reality is incorrect? Like, maybe they're not seeing certain things correctly. Like, how do we make sense of our past if we're not making sense of it correctly or accurately, if you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually a facilitator for a program called Making Sense of Your Worth.
Okay.
And it's really looking at like the lies that you tell yourself or that other people have placed on you.
Mm.
And then looking again at like our worth is inherent. Like we are born worthy. But because of the things that have happened to us or that people have said to us, then we start to make up stories that we're not worthy.
So then when you, so what if I were to say, well, how do you know I'm born worthy? Like, I've done these things wrong. What's the worth in this? I've made these mistakes. I've fallen short. I don't believe you. I don't think I'm born worthy. Like what, how would you address that?
Well, I think I would go back to my faith,
Hmm.
right? My faith and the belief that I have in my higher power, who I say is Jesus Christ.
Right.
Like he says that I'm worthy. He knows the truth of who I am.
Right.
And when I'm able to know that I'm made in God's image,
Right.
what I've done doesn't define me.
Right.
What other people have said about me doesn't define me,
Right.
because those are all just behaviors, and I have inherent worth because God says I have inherent worth.
That I didn't know what direction you were going to take that question, and I was thinking the exact same thing, and I was like, I wonder where this will go.
Oh,
And I that was amazing. I literally like, yeah, that is so true. And so then, like, to add one point to just to that, and just the reality of that, because sometimes we know that in our minds, but we don't always comprehend the gravity of what that means, and what that is. And I always kind of come back to this idea of, is everything that we see, the people, the earth, all these things, just some random accident that's just thrown together? And if that's true, I don't have inherent worth. I'm an accident. I'm a mutation that happened to be, over the course of billions of years, just happened to be end up in this room talking to you. There is literally no purpose outside of whatever I want to tell myself for anything about me. It's impossible. And to to grasp the idea that there is an intelligent design, that there's a creator, that there's a God who very clearly, to the naked eye, had a design and purpose for all of us. And to fall under that, and to believe that, and to see, no, there's something I'm supposed to be doing. There's something about this human experience that really means something, and that matters. um that for me is the only thing that pushes me to a point to walk away with my own self-doubt, or my lies, or things that been people have told me. And I'm like, I've wondered, like, why am I talking about relationships when my marriage didn't work? Who am I to say that? What is God? God has plans for all of these things. The crap that we go through, the negative just spirals that we find ourselves in. I don't want to stay in that place forever, and he doesn't want me to either. So yeah, I love that. That's good. Very, very,
well, and I
very.
think one of the things I say for myself that I've done, and I work with my clients, is that we have to move what's in our head into our heart, into our body, and out through our life.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And so I know my worth, right? When I know my worth, I can know it up here, and then I know it in my heart, and I know it in my body, and then I live it throughout my life,
Right.
right? But when I was believing the lies, my heart was hurt and my body felt it, and my life was an example of it.
Right.
But now that I am walking in my worth and I'm not living in my shame, I can carry out my purpose.
Yeah. That's
I can share my story and know that the past is the past and it doesn't define me. And if there are people that want to judge me from my past, that's about them and not about me.
right. That's yeah. Yes. I probably need to get that phrase, like, tattooed somewhere on it, because I forget that sometimes. But it's so true. Yeah, it's very true. And but we need reminders of that. And
Absolutely.
when I was thinking of those four steps that you said so perfectly, I was thinking that's why sometimes I think a having a person to help through those steps is so important. A therapist, a coach, a friend, just because that's hard to do by yourself. I think so.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah, and you really have to, I mean, for me, I had to move away from some of the relationships from my past. I love people. Like I love people. I love my friends, all of my relationships that I've had. But there are some relationships that I know that I can't be in because they're talking bad about people. They're talking bad about themselves, and that
Right.
makes me feel bad about me.
Right.
And so I've had to separate myself and move into more healthier relationships of people that do see my value, that know that what I've done doesn't define me.
Right.
And that's what a therapist is going to do. That's what a coach is going to do. That's what a healthy mentor is going to do.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah, that's I think where I see the path of my life is trying to be that for friends, anybody, male, female, just I think that's what I um like following you on Facebook and seeing like some of the things that you post and some of the things you're wanting to do. I got that feel from you that that was who you are and what you want to be and do. And imagine if we were still stuck in those past places. And, not even just for ourselves personally, which is horrible, but just there's people that need not just you and I, but there's people that need us to be in that particular place because it's going to be a benefit to them. And if we're stuck, then we're missing the mark somehow.
Yeah. Well, as a single woman who's dating and putting myself out there now to build relationship, to have healthy intimacy, as soon as I start talking to someone, and as soon as I hear that they're not going to see, hear, and value me for who I am and respect my experiences and my wisdom, like I can't I can't continue to be in a relationship that's not going to see me.
Right.
I'm not gonna say everything right. I'm not gonna do everything right all the time. And can
Right.
I have grace? And can you get curious with me? Can you get clarity from me? Because
Right.
if you can't, then I've got to move on.
Yeah. No, that I think even just that statement right there is so true is so many times. And it's the it's the bad part of hope where we see what we want to see, we see these things and we just, well, maybe this will be maybe it's like uh I'm a big believer in relationships, especially as they start or blossom, as man, you have to know your boundaries early on. I mean, not just physically, just in all things. Like, oh, this can't be a part of any relationship. I can't excuse. We need to have a conversation about this because I'm not going to close an eye to this.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I mean, I want someone to be there to hold me accountable too. Like I don't want to just plow through a relationship or think that
Right.
I'm always right,
Right.
but come to me and get curious and get clarity instead of making up stories about me.
We're getting close to this the end of this episode, and I just had this like brain realization that what you and I need to do in the future is have a podcast episode on masculine feminine dynamics within a relationship.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, um we're both Enneagram 8s, correct? For those
Yeah.
Enneagram, yeah. So there's
Yes.
even that dynamic and tying in some elements there, I think would be fascinating. So that'll be a future
Yeah.
episode. I would it's a
Sounds
super
good.
interesting concept to me. So uh folks, we're at the end of episode 51. This has been a blast. I hope you guys have connected with Linda and heard her story. I mean, even just being able to do this myself, I've learned a lot. And just there's so many, there's even a deeper level to go into than what we talked about. But I hope this was beneficial.
Yeah.
Um, we'll
Thank
make
you.
Yes, that was great. You did amazing job. As we're finishing up episode 51, I want to make sure that everybody knows that you can find Linda's information in the show notes. So please do that. Linda, why don't you tell everybody what would be what would you like to tell everybody? How would you like to connect? What do you have to offer if someone's like, I want to know more about what Linda does? What would you say to that?
Sure. Well, I'm licensed in Oklahoma, so you'd have to be in Oklahoma to work with me as a therapist. But I do have a side business, kind of a coaching business with a direct sales company that I'm with, and I sell skincare line, some health nutrition products, which are kosher certified. Um, and then we also have travel. So if anybody has a want or a need to travel, look good, feel good, I'd love to work with you. So you could, like Ben said, you can find my information in the show notes. You can follow me on social media. Just reach out.
Yeah,
Be happy to help.
perfect. Well, that's great. Well, people will do that. We'll look forward to some of the conversations, even maybe on YouTube. We'd love to. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow. We'll have some clips of this on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. So feel free to see those, comment, reach out. This has been for me selfishly an amazing time getting to know you and just what you offered. So I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming
Thank you. I
on,
appreciate
and
that.
yeah. Folks, we'll be back next time for episode 52. I'm actually working through 3 possible interviews with my children on this, so that might be we'll see, we'll see how that goes. I'm working through my kids' schedules. They may have boundaries. They may say, Dad, I don't want to talk to people about. I was like, we'll see. I'm working on them though, or respectfully working on them. We'll see. So folks, thanks for checking us out. We will see you next time. Have an amazing, amazing day. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Let's keep the conversation going. You can reach out on Ben's website, www.benkeatshow.com, or on social media to chat. And please remember to subscribe so that you never miss an episode.